Because the itch David was scratching that night was not sex, it was conquest.
It was conquest.
And that's why so many people got hurt.
So I'm just thinking of like how some of the worst habits that we have, I could go down the list of all these different things what we can call out as bad habits. It didn't just start off usually as just a terrible bad habit. It's little things that kind of progress you over the edge until that habit is full grown.
And understand that dreams are a huge part of the creative process, but dreams are a womb. They are not a room for growth. They are a womb to carry the thing until it is ready, right?
Dreams feel good because it's not real life. The same thing even with nightmares.
Right.
It could be super terrifying and traumatic as well, but it's not real life.
Right. Gods arise out of fetishized familiarity.
What is the person that you're trying to become? How do they react? How do they respond to? And once you've made that assessment, then you can really start to understand what's guiding you, what you're worshiping, how your habits are forming you.
If you're looking to manifest something new in your life, or let me just take the loaded language away from it.
What if I told you you were meant for something more? And what if at first sight your birthright was inked in blood? And what if dominion was written in big bold letters? And what if we shouldn't just occupy but overcome? And what if the observation of opposition was us? Antikemi, the podcast.
Guess who's back?
Yes, sir.
That's what I'm talking about, man.
Back like we never left.
It's because we didn't.
That's very true.
If you're over on the other channel, I'm sorry you're not with us.
That's correct. Yes. New channel, who this?
Yeah.
Yeah. We have successfully migrated over to our brand new channel, Antikemi, the podcast. If you're here, you're in the right place.
And if you've got peeps you know catch these episodes that might not have caught all the news or the live or whatever, please holler at your people. Make sure they know where to find us.
Yes.
We did not kill the podcast.
No. What I have found, it's been super crazy with the word of mouth, even getting like comments of like saying, where can we find like outline notes of like what the episodes are about, so that way they can kind of pass out to their friend groups. So yeah, people are definitely digging the content, and I love that for them.
Yes, sir. Any other business we need to handle?
Nah, I mean, we're coming in after the live. That was super cool.
So this is episode 2, technically, right? Or is this episode 1?
Well, I'm gonna just keep the count going. I'm not even gonna start over, even though we're saying,
but I'm
like
just saying
season,
of the season.
Yeah. So
is this episode 1 or 2 of season 2?
It'll be episode 2, I guess, technically.
Okay.
Of season 2, but episode 32.
Okay.
If we're kind of keeping the count going. I just want to keep on stacking on what we've already built as far as funneled through the content. But yeah, the live was fun. I like doing stuff like that. Hopefully we'll do a lot more of it as well. But
yeah,
we're kind of back to regular scheduled programming.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So what we can get into tonight? Oh, wait, that's not my line, is it?
That's funny. Because you clearly know. That was my line, sir.
I apologize for that.
And you love it, every bit of it.
And we just keep the bloopers in.
Yeah, man.
Man, I've been thinking about something that I genuinely believe we're supposed to have this conversation. It relates to a lot of conversations we've had. It's a different way of approaching it. Okay, here it is. It's my perception that most of us, most people, most of the time, are sleepwalking through life.
Very true.
Reliving, working out, old processing, I guess. Old, well, maybe not either processing or just what would a better word for it be? Because you may not be actually processing it, but you're
experiencing.
Yeah, you're re-experiencing old traumas for sure, but also even old pleasures, old desires, unrequited desires is a big one. Missed opportunities. Moments that brought shame, humiliation, embarrassment, anxiety, fear. Okay, most of people, I think, are sleepwalking through life because unknown to them, they have not realized yet that they are in this dream state. And so unbeknownst to them, they are replaying scenarios 1,000 times. It almost as though they are running and rerunning a simulation, but they're not changing any of the key factors.
No.
I think that's a big mistake a lot of us are making a lot of the time is we change the we change the inactive variables. In other words, we're doing a different shtick, but it's the same components. The bit is the same. The punchline is the same. Everything that could alter the outcome is the same. It is no different than playing games of Monopoly on all the specialty boards. All of the factors you've changed don't change anything about outcomes.
I like that analogy. Yeah, that's good.
So you can play Austin Monopoly, but if you're trying to figure out what is going wrong in your hotel strategy, just switching to Austin Monopoly, LA Monopoly, none of that is going to...
Yeah, doesn't matter.
It's literally going to be same crap, different crapper, right? So I think this is the majority of the human experience for most people, at least that are adults. And there are some really simple principles that can give you a dig out and get you started living instead of reliving. And understand that dreams are a huge part of the creative process, but dreams are a womb. They are not a room for growth. They are a womb to carry the thing until it is ready, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, we don't lean heavy into the word manifestation here because it's so loaded, but I mean, it is a word the Bible uses. If you're looking to manifest something new in your life, or let me just take the loaded language away from it, if you're hoping to create a new reality, and we are not big C creators, but we are creators. We are co-creators with God. So if you're looking to create something new in your life and finding yourself interminably frustrated by being unable to see real change where you're really looking for it, it's very possible that the problem is not anything to do with the methodology. You don't need to figure out how to be more positive in how you speak. You don't need better affirmations. You know, bad theology is bad, but that's probably not why. Like, you probably don't have to fix your theology to get, you know, none of that is probably the deal. What it is you need to stop trying to build your life inside of a dream. You can't live and relive at the same time. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
And so what we have to do is find a way to come out of the dream where the idea was born, which is the part that the dream state does play, the longing, the idea, the hope, all of that can come in that state. But then you have to find a way to wake up out of that and into a lived vision that is in the real world where this can take shape and come into your reality. And I think it's so much simpler than we think it is to get started, to really get started. Seeing massive change through tiny increments, I think it's so much simpler than we make it. And I think the Bible really speaks to it. I've been thinking a lot about the concept of household gods, and I think that plays in. So I kind of wanted to get into it tonight.
I love that. Looking at the difference between using a dream as a destination as opposed to you living inside that space and thinking it's just going to, like you were saying, manifest without you doing anything really different at all. There's no changes in the inputs, like you said. We're just constantly living. Dreams feel good because it's not real life. The same thing even with nightmares.
Right.
It could be super terrifying and traumatic as well, but it's not real life.
Right.
And if you are stuck in that state without ever recognizing the need to make a change, then you will definitely cycle. You will definitely be in a buffering state of mind. I can dig it.
Buffering is good. That's a good analogy. Mm-hmm. I feel like I just did the most protracted and least succinct plot promise of all time, but let me just bumper sticker it and say, by the grace of God, not only do I believe real answers are available, we're going to get to them tonight. Mm-hmm. So if you stick with us, you're going to leave this conversation with at least one or two really strong core concepts, takeaway keys that you're going to know what they are, and you're going to know how they can show up tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
And they're going to be way more attainable than you're worried that they're going to be. And they're going to have so much more of a far-reaching impact on your life than you foresee. Mm-hmm. You know, a month from now, I'm talking 2 weeks from now, a month from now, you will look back and be like, when did we switch timelines?
Yeah.
And it will be impossible to wrap your conscious mind around how did that grow out of that tiny little tweak we made to the model. Yeah. The only difference is the tweak you made to the model happened in the real world, not in the dream.
Come on.
That's the only difference. You change anything in the real world. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say,
physical world.
If you are tired of buffering and ready to actually believe the person that you can become, stick with us. You are tuned into Antikemi, the podcast. My name is Jonathan.
I'm Schulz.
And we will be your tour guides for the foreseeable future. Stick with us. We're going someplace.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Come on. Let's jump into it, my brother.
So the way I jotted it down is we're talking here about gods. So the concept of gods, but basically little g. It does ultimately apply to the Most High when you get it right. Yeah. But we're talking about gods, guides, habits, and handlers.
Come on, alliteration.
So the that was for you.
I love
it. So here's what I'm thinking about. There are certain things in our lives that become gods, by which I mean we are centered on them and codependent upon them and subservient to their agenda.
Yeah.
So they are gods to us. And these feel to us subconsciously like our guides. We don't think of them as our gods. We think of them as our guides. They keep us safe. because they are familiar, because of the way they've shown up in our past. And you got to remember, we're talking about a version of reality where you're constantly reliving past moments.
Right.
And over the process of time, those things habituate in our lives. They become habits. And where the rug pull lives is right after habits, because habits, we'll talk about it, has to do with where you live. But the rug pull is by the time you have instilled these things in your life as guides, unbeknownst to you, they are already your gods. But by the time they become your habits, you even lose the awareness of them.
Yeah. There we
And
go.
some of this is transgenerational, so you may have never been personally aware of them. But the rug pull is that the way they actually function in the end is as your handlers. They keep you in service of an agenda you didn't choose consciously and wouldn't consciously choose.
Yeah.
And therefore, by definition, they are demonic. They have become your demons. But they are also, they define your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And so that's the ugly little rug pull of it all. And the way that plays out in our life is so mundane that this all sounds like supercharged, very, very hyper spiritualized and hyper dramatic. Like, this sounds very melodramatic. But the thing is, the super mundane stuff in your life also exists. That it shows up in your physical life as very mundane.
Come on.
But it exists in the spirit realm in a much less mundane way.
Yeah. And it wouldn't be good at what it does if it was super loud and boisterous and making itself known.
Right.
It's going, like, subtlety is where its bread and butter is at.
Yes. The best camouflage of the paranormal is that it shows up in physicality as normal. Most paranormality that people are dealing with is not the exorcism of Emily Rose. That's kind of what happens sometimes when you turn the light on.
Yeah.
And show what it is.
Yeah.
But until that point, it feels much more like sometimes like Stepford Wives, like very manicured. But it can also just feel like The Office, you know?
Yeah.
Like it can just feel so normal. But that is the camouflage in the realm of physicality. In the spirit realm, it is not like that at all. It's very, very dark and very dramatic a lot of times. So if we understand it, it has to show up. When it shows up, it can be dealt with. When it's dealt with, change happens, and you get to live because something fundamental changed. As soon as you change a key input in the simulation you're running, as soon as you change a key input, outcomes change. So when you change this key input and go, that's not going to be a part of the story anymore, all of a sudden you're standing in this whole new version of reality. Everybody's seen the butterfly effect.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be something massive. You changed something.
I want to go back to something else that you said, though, because when I think about the worst habits that we highlight, nobody starts off with an intention to be like, I'm going to be a horrible parent to my child, necessarily.
Right.
It's just like little things that you did not think would magnify later on. You not putting enough, time into listening to them, right? Or allowing them to be vulnerable around you, or being patient with what they are trying to articulate. And those little things kind of like compound itself upon itself.
Yep.
And then you found yourself in an estranged type of relationship, and you're like, man, what happened? How do we get here? Well, those habits, and I'm noticing that about myself. I'm kind of like looking at how I interact with my little girl.
Yep.
In the times where she's just like, Daddy, play with me. And I'm like right neck deep inside some work that I got to get done. I'm trying to hit flow state, and I feel locked in. And she always comes in at the most inopportune time. And she, in her world, is like, it's playtime. There's nothing else that we should be or could be doing right now.
Yeah.
And I'm learning that the habits that I practice right now with her is going to manifest later on.
Yeah.
Either good or bad.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm trying to like force myself to like see those quiet moments as being integral to her development, and recognize like I only have this much time while she's this little, where she wants to have the presence of her father to get on the ground with her and play with her.
Yeah.
Why not take that extra moment in time and do that? The work I got to get done, it can wait. You know what I mean? So I'm just thinking about like how some of the worst habits that we have. I could go down the list of all these different things where we can call out as bad habits. It didn't just start off usually as just a terrible bad habit. It's little things that kind of progress you over the edge until that habit is full grown and you can't help yourself, but you've established that rhythm already,
Man, prioritizing for a lot of us dudes, with that kind of provider instinct being so baked in, the hunt and gather and defend and protect and all of that. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of times we all know we're prioritizing presence with a TS, and they want presence with a CE. Mm-hmm. And that is such a massive mistake to make, because by the time your presence can't buy their attention or affection, all you want is their presence. CE.
Yeah.
But they're off down the road, unfortunately, often repeating the cycle.
Yeah.
Or living their whole life saying the one mistake I'm not going to make is thinking I can buy my children's love.
Yes.
But by the time we realize what we did,
it's too late.
I mean, for what we wish we could change, is not too late to acknowledge, take ownership, and ask how you can show up now, if they're willing to give you permission to do that. But yeah, it is often too late to get the thing you're longing for, mm-hmm. which is now you just want little them, and little them, has flown the nest.
Yeah.
That's not a hopeless situation to be in, but it does suck, and it would require quite a journey and you can do it. But if you have the opportunity to not make that mistake today with your kids, let's prioritize that. And if you're dealing with your grandkids, let's quit mourning what happened with the kids and see if we have a chance to fix something with the grandkids. Like, just start where you are. Right. Make that. So that's one thing that jumps out to me when you're saying that, is it is often just imbalanced priorities and things like that are often coming from a place that really isn't bad. It's just misguided. But the other thing that comes to me is some of the worst stuff we do, as far as really maybe being either evil or just deeply, deeply, deeply damaging, is stuff that we're replaying our own childhoods, and it was so normalized to us that we didn't we didn't know that that's not okay, that that's not how things are.
Yeah.
And that's a hard lesson to learn when you realize, because you get hit by two massive Mack trucks of realization at the same time. One, I have been doing something to my people that is not okay. And two, good Lord, everybody did that to me my whole life, which was not okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's heavy. But that's the human experience, y'all. Regret is such a lie. Again, it starts with that Anything that starts with that you got to be real.
Gotta examine.
Pay attention to it. It's not always bad, but it can be really dangerous because anything with we're talking about again, respect is good, repentance is good, but man, like we need to be very aware when that word pops up, because regret, that I've said it before and I'll say it again, that just takes you 1,000 times back to a place you were never supposed to be once. Yeah. And it just perpetuates the moment. So we all know Psalm 23 because we've all been to a wedding or a funeral. And some of us know that there is no, I think the first person I ever heard preach this was Dr. Willis, the great Andrew J. Willis from Houston, Texas, or the south side of Chicago, depending on how far you want to go back. There is no noun, shepherd, in Hebrew. There's only the verb to shepherd.
Yeah.
Shepherding is something one does. So where we say the Lord is my shepherd, the Hebrew reads more like the Lord is shepherding me. So I'm not going to lack anything.
It's continuous.
So that's a great observation just off the top, that like the psalmist is saying, I am being actively guided, fed, protected, comforted. So I'm not going to come from a position of lack. But verse 3, Psalm 23:3, he restores my soul. There's again one of those words, restores. My nephesh, my breath. He brings back my breath, which I thought was such a powerful image when we're talking about how often we have to reset our nervous system when we're in trauma. And so he restores my soul. He guides me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Two observations there. The less important one, this psalm reads so churchy in English. And yet the actual analogy that's being used is so earthy. It's so human, or it's just of earth. It's of it smells like grass and poop, and so where it says in paths of righteousness, there's the Net Bible is really nice on this one. So if you go to the Net Bible, because the Net Bible is famous for having the most footnotes.
Yeah.
You know, so if you're ever curious, as far as our listeners and watchers, if you're ever curious about like anything to do with any passage, a really good tool is the Net Bible, because it's just like, you're going to see all the footnotes. Everything has an asterisk after it. So righteousness probably could be better understood in this context as right paths, the right ones, good ones, safe ones, whole ones. We're talking about shepherding here. We're not talking about church.
No.
So when he says he leads me in paths of righteousness, they're saying, well, in conversational Hebrew, he probably is just saying he leads me to the right paths. And for his name's sake, again, sounds so churchy until you realize what he's saying is because his reputation as a shepherd is at stake.
That's right.
So he's got his name to defend as a good shepherd. He is actively shepherding me. He's leading me into the right paths. He's breathing new life into me, resetting my breath. He's restoring my soul. Think of an out-of-breath sheep that's been scared by something, and the shepherd is calming its nervous system, letting it know, hey, I'm here, everything's good, I got you. But the big one is paths. It's the word there is ruts or deeply worn circular tracks. So he leads me in the right cycles.
Deeply worn circular tracks.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is the path the shepherd takes when he's taking care of his sheep. I'm sure that the idea there is you're shifting from one grazing area to another grazing area to give them time to grow back and all of that. So when you're there, the shepherd is following the paths that worked well last time. So the Lord is actively shepherding me, and he is breathing new life into me, resetting my nervous system, and making sure that the cycles that are reproduced in my life are productive.
Yeah, man, that's so good. I'll never read Psalm 23 the same way again.
Right?
That's rich. Wow.
So this is how the Most High handles cycles. This is how the Most High handles trauma. This is how the Most High handles care for your life if you allow him to be the driving force. That's the image that we're being given there.
Not to throw you off, but this is something that just came to mind. I don't even know how well it connects, but
we'll make it.
We're going to see it.
If there's one thing about us, we can find the connection in anything.
I saw recently, it was like a thread post, whatever, and someone was saying they just learned why there was like a deep-seated feeling, especially with like black people, and why a fear almost of not splitting a pole. Have you ever heard this before?
Oh, you told me. This blew my mind.
This is like crazy, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like if you ever met, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, this connects directly.
Right. As far as like cycles, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And deeply embedded like trauma loops.
Yeah.
And so if you ever like, I'm not saying all black people, but a lot of, for whatever reason, whether we've been told about it or not, if we're in a group and somebody is walking and they're going to split the pole as you're walking as a group, a lot of people will be like, hey, don't split the pole, stay with the group.
Yeah.
And so someone asked the question, like, why do we do that? Like, where did that come from? It's like, well, they did a little bit of research. It's like, oh, it came all the way back to slavery, right? So chattel slavery. Right, shocking. Whoever was potentially leading, and I don't know if it kind of originated with like Harriet Tubman, but whoever was leading the
That's
runaway
crazy
slaves,
that could go back to Harriet Tubman potentially.
Right. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Whoever's leading the slaves
in the Underground Railroad, we're talking about.
Underground Railroad, right? The path that they're supposed to take has been worn down, has been traveled, and it's been researched. And if you have somebody who is splitting the pole or a tree line, they're saying don't split the tree line. So if we're all headed this way and we see the tree here and the guide is taking us right around the tree, we need to stay right, because if you split the tree line, that means you're going left. And there's danger there. It's untraveled. It could be unsafe. And you're creating another pathway for people who are coming behind us that they should not follow, that we haven't tested.
My God.
And so that's why they're like, don't split the pole. Don't split the tree line. You know what I mean? And so I think that's kind of like really interesting with the fact of like the right cycles that our shepherd, our good shepherd, is taking us through. Saying that, hey, you're going to go through cycles. There's a habit that's forming. There's repetition that's necessary. But you need to follow the right habit. And that just goes back to who's shepherding you, of course, the gods in your life that you don't recognize them as being gods, and they're operating in the position and the authority as a guide.
Bro, this is so good.
So, yeah, that was kind of a cool little...
You kind of, you really crystallized something in my mind with that example, because, you know, that's a great example of something that shows up super mundane.
Yeah.
I've, you know, been out on a date with Brooke, and, I mean, not in a long time, but back when we had lives. And yes, the Lord's working on me, and you know, kind of laughingly, jokingly, you know, holding hands, whatever, and you go, "Oh, don't split the pole," and you just kind of laugh, and for me, that likely is not really, it doesn't carry the same baggage, but that's the thing about mundanity is, for one thing, not everything is the same for everyone.
Right.
Just because something seems like a nothing burger doesn't mean that it is a nothing burger.
Yeah.
And it's not silly to double check stuff and question stuff. I'll say this, because this is where superstition is such an odd thing, because superstition is ritualized trauma.
There we go. There we go.
We don't even know. I mean, I have no idea where the idea came in that if you go buy crack, your mom will never come back. No, wait, that's not.
You step on a crack. You'll break your mama's back.
Break your mama's back. The other one was something different. You can't go buy crack, or you're. I grew up in a trailer park, I guess.
Period. Just don't go back.
Don't go back crack.
Hard stop. Full stop.
So stupid. Anyway, we don't know where those things came from.
Yeah.
But we do understand that it is like this vague shadow of a fear. And I don't think most of us are taking that stuff very seriously. Some of us are. I will say, as somebody who has experienced and has people close to me that are experiencing a real OCD, sometimes that stuff stops being funny when it shows up in that kind of format where obsessions get involved. Then your life is being controlled by something like that. But bottom line is, whether it shows up in an overtly damaging way or not, you are performing a rite. You are doing a ritualized cultural. It just is. It's a rite. It's a ritual that expresses and reiterates some echo of a trauma. And maybe the splitting the pole one may not be directly my personal lineage trauma, my familial or ancestral trauma, but maybe it could be yours. So for one thing, that might not have the same impact on our souls. That little lighthearted moment, unbeknownst to us, might not have exactly the same impact on our souls. We may not really understand what that difference is. But another side of it that I think is profound that I would like people to really latch on to, because I'm not saying never do the stupid, whatever. That's your conscience. You do what you want to do. But doing something unconsciously is very different from doing it consciously.
Yes, sir.
So if you choose in a lighthearted moment to say to your spouse, knowing that there is some baggage here, but we're playing with it, because under the right circumstances, playing with your trauma can be healthy, but never when it's unconscious. You might choose to do that. Like, hey, don't split the pole. But doing that with an awareness of where it comes from and what it is and how it, now you know what you're playing with.
Yeah.
And that has a very different impact on your soul than the unconscious stuff. So that's, I'd say, if we're talking about key takeaways, that would be almost key takeaway number one, would be when you're looking to break these unconscious cycles that may be guiding your life and unbeknownst to you functioning as what the Bible would call a household god or a familiar spirit, or what we might call transgenerational trauma. Because those are all just different ways of talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
So what a key takeaway, if you're looking to break that stuff, is notice unconscious and subconscious ritual in your life and interrogate it. It doesn't mean you'll throw it away, but you can make a choice to not do it unconsciously anymore.
Yep.
And right there, you have stepped out of the dream. You are no longer reliving. Even if you are replaying, Even if you are replaying a thing, you have intent involved now. Now, for instance, if you'll pardon me using you as an example, you say to your bride, don't split the pole. You've gone from subconsciously reliving a cultural trauma you're not even aware of to, and I'm reaching way high for this example, but it's a little more in the category of David writing a psalm about how God delivered him from all of his enemies and saying, play this one on an instrument from Gath.
Yeah.
On an instrument that I stole from the Philistines. So now you've crossed into that boundary of consciously playing with something that could have hurt you, should have hurt you, could have killed you, but it didn't. Now you're almost, it's like the spoils of war. It's like, no, we're still here. We're still out here. And not only that, I'm free. I don't have to hide. Nobody tells me where I have to be other than the Spirit of God. And I don't know. I think there's something deep there to just say, question those things. And at the very least, decide not to do them unconsciously anymore. And if you don't know what it is, maybe don't. Like, I've found that to be a good guideline more often than not. If I don't understand what something is, it's probably better left alone for now. Because you don't know what your soul's connection is to it.
You don't. I like that.
So you have this statement from David about the Lord is my shepherd, or he is shepherding me. I shall not want. All this that we just meditated on about the way that he guides the cycles of our lives. And it's so rich. The reason I isolated verse 3 was because if I left verse 1 and 2, we were going to have to go through that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then fast forward a bunch of years, like a long time. David's son, Solomon. This remark in 1 Kings 11:4 is made about Solomon right at the end of his life. 1 Kings 11 opens up with a discussion about the fact that Solomon really liked him some tail. I mean, and I get that these were political alliances and all that, but it says over and over, he loved a lot of women.
Yeah.
And it says he kept them because he loved them.
Right.
Like,
it wasn't just political.
There was politics, but he enjoyed the game.
Yes. Yes, sir.
All of it. And this statement is made about Solomon that's really tragic. And before anybody gets defensive, the women in his life are not being blamed. The covenants are. It doesn't say that he's led astray by the women in his life. It says he's led astray by his many wives. So the covenant, I want people to catch that because people get a little defensive about that. How are you going to blame the king's issues on, it's always the women out here taking our, no, it's not the women. It's the covenants. That's what got it. He wasn't supposed to be in covenant with them.
That's good.
So it says, 1 Kings 11:4, when Solomon was old, his wives turned his heart away. Here it is. The contrast between the Lord is shepherding me and this. Turned his heart away after other gods. Gods. And his heart was not wholly devoted to the Lord his God, to Jehovah his God, as the heart of David his father had been. I got to thinking about that because David also married a lot of wives, not as many as Solomon, and he didn't seem to have a habit of marrying foreign wives. He did, however, enter one covenant very unwisely.
Yeah.
And even predatorily, potentially. And I got to thinking, you know, David's wives did not turn him away from God because that wasn't off in those covenants. They were people that were aligned in key ways. And David did not secure the peace of the empire by making political agreements. He did it through conquest.
Right.
Different rulership style, that's fine. Which there's a whole discussion because there's a statement made about how many wives Solomon had and how many concubines he had.
Yeah.
And it's an important discussion because what we're talking about there is degrees of covenant obligation. By the way, you showing off our good merch. That's the good right there. So there's a discussion to be had there about Solomon bound himself much more to some influences than to others.
Oh, man.
But I got to thinking about the fact that Solomon is the fruit of David's one unwise marriage.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, y'all, we're ignoring the polygamy. I know this sounds lame. Different time, different culture.
I mean, but that is true, though.
Yeah. Like it literally, like whole different system of world governance where kings made this a part of their whatever. It was baked in. We're not taking a moral stance on that, but we're talking about a deeper issue in these covenants.
That's very interesting, that the fact that there was so much generational patterns
There it is.
that were established, not just from David. I go back to Jesse.
I went there today, bro. Cook.
Because I look at, okay, before David was king, he had a very strained father and son dynamic relationship with him and Saul. And you have to ask yourself, what about that father-son relationship would cause somebody who was as volatile, quick-tempered, violent, skilled as David, that would allow somebody to try and kill you for a number of years, and not only do you not retaliate, but you still maintain a deep devotion and a love for him?
Right.
What type of father wound is there for that? The Bible doesn't go into detail between David and Jesse, but you can kind of fill in the blanks a little bit with the fact of how he wasn't even considered a part of his sons when they were being summoned to stand before Samuel, when he was asking for his sons to be presented.
Right.
David wasn't included at first.
No.
And it had to be the Spirit of the Most High God to speak to Samuel and be like, hey, is there anybody else? Because this ain't it.
And when Samuel said, do you have any others? They basically said, we don't talk about Bruno.
Right. It's like, yeah, we got another one. But, and I mean, we know that the Jewish tradition like leaves us to believe that.
As Candace Owens would say, we don't know.
But the context is there, and it makes so much sense. It's believed that David was birthed out of a relationship that was not authorized.
Yeah.
It was...
Could have been concubine, which would just mean David had less status.
Right.
Which would have baked in trauma.
But his mother wasn't considered...
But it might have
wife.
even been prostitute. Like,
Yeah.
that's the traditional view, is that it might have even been prostitute. It's not like a ruling. Nobody says this is what happened. But context clues, people. And
Well, that's going back to what Psalms 51, you know.
yeah,
I was
born in sin,
shaped in iniquity. And so it's like, some of this is poetic language and some of this is autobiographical.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And
It's
David
like,
didn't know about original sin. So it bothers
There we
me
go.
when people
There
say
we go.
that's what he was talking about when
There
he
we
said I
go.
was born
Come
in.
on.
Bro.
that is so crazy that they made that theological quantum leap
Yeah.
to say David is writing underneath the unction of the Spirit about original sin.
No, David was writing about something pertinent to his life, which looks a little like, yeah, he might have had some trauma connected to where he came from. And very likely because Psalm 51 is when he's repenting for the very covenant we're talking about and the mayhem that led to it. It's very possible that David is wrestling with and recognizing that cycle in his life, in his family, when he says that in that psalm. Isn't that interesting? That he's basically like, I did kind of come from this. I see what I did. I did the thing that my family does.
And when it comes to cycles, two things happen. You either rebuke it or you repeat it.
And remember, when you repeat it,
Yeah.
because rebuke it or repeat it is a perfect way to put it, because you have dominion. You can rebuke it.
Yes.
But remember, you don't retrace a path without having an impact on it. So every time the cycle is repeated, it is worn deeper.
Yes.
So just because Jesse didn't kill somebody over it, didn't steal somebody's wife necessarily, he might have just hired a hooker or whatever he did, but David is retracing a path here. So yeah, it's deeper.
And he overcorrects with how he chooses to parent.
Right.
So now you have David's sons and you have Solomon, who comes a little bit later, but before that you had Absalom,
Yep.
who is now in conflict with his brother Amnon, right?
Yeah, because he raped his sister.
Right. So you have something that is tragic and really punishable. It could have been capital punishment.
And doesn't happen in a home where there isn't trauma.
No, it doesn't. And instead of like really dealing with it, he kind of just sweeps it underneath the rug and it's just like, it'll kind of blow over.
Yeah.
And that's not how these things work. And we know the story. Civil war breaks out in his kingdom based upon his lack of discipline and leadership in that moment, which I think was really triggered from a previous father wound that was never, ever quite addressed, going all the way back to Jesse. And who knows what Obed did with Jesse.
Yes.
Because if I remember that correctly, that was the son from Ruth and Boaz, right? Yeah. And so we always look at that as like this beautiful like love story or whatnot, but there was trauma there.
There was heavy trauma there.
Super heavy trauma there from somebody who wasn't even culturally part of the Israelite mindset.
Well, and the uncomfortable thing, again, we have churched this all the way out of the story, but Ruth didn't exactly holiness her way into that marriage.
No.
Like,
study the language, y'all. I'm just going to say that. Study the language. I'll leave it at that.
She went and got her man.
Right.
Like,
she was coached. That was like, hey, this is what you do.
Yeah.
So study the language.
Go show this gentleman a good evening.
Right. It's a reason why he said, hey, you hide here until morning. Like, don't leave out now.
Yeah, he wasn't trying to get her killed.
Facts.
Can we meditate on this for a minute? Because this whole discussion got so messy so fast, and we are dealing here with the lineage of our Lord. Mm-hmm. We are dealing with the grandparental line.
Yes.
Everybody that we've mentioned is his grandparents, his uncles, the dude that raped his sister in David's house is a great whatever grand uncle of the Lord. Jesus. Like, so I'm wanting people to clock, y'all, how do I say this without sounding like I'm excusing atrocious behavior? Let people be more than one-dimensional. Allow, when God uses somebody in your life, don't fetishize that person. Don't put them in a space in your mind that only the Lord Jesus and our Heavenly Father should live in. You know what I mean? Like there is people are complex and they do a lot of really stupid stuff. Mm-hmm. And sometimes really good people do really bad stuff. And this gets a little delicate when we talk about specifically pastors.
Yeah.
Because the bar to be a bishop, an overseer, a shepherd in the Lord's church is astoundingly high. Like, astoundingly high. There is no other job description that comes with the kind of requirements and expectations of a shepherd. And the reason for that is you don't have to be an ordained elder to be in the Lord's church. Nobody has a right to be an ordained elder, no matter what their gifting is, no matter what their calling is, no matter the anointing on their life. No one has a right to the office, nor is it salvation critical. They can be removed from the office and still be totally covered by grace, totally. And so we are not supposed, yes, we are not supposed to hold pastors to a bar for grace, that we wouldn't hold anyone else to. Grace has to be available to them the same way that it is to everyone else.
Yes, sir.
But that is not the same thing as discussing their office. Grace has nothing to do with their office other than that if you preserve that office well, it was by the grace of God. But grace covering your sin is completely unconnected from whether or not you qualify for that office. Mm-hmm. So any of us can lose it on any day, like any day that we go to bed and we still qualify to be in that office on any significant level. We have been kept by the grace of God. So I think sometimes because the discussion around pastors is so intense, because the bar was set so high in Scripture, which is specifically because that role is such a direct extension of the active shepherding of the Lord the lives of his flock.
Come on.
The bar is just basically impossibly high apart from the sustaining grace of God, because you are representing an aspect of the Lord Jesus's interaction with his flock that has to do with whether someone winds up being a productive sheep or a lamb chop. And the Lord takes that really seriously. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
So that's kind of a sidebar. So this is not me asking you to not hold pastors to account. But it is me saying, dude, people are not one-dimensional. Mm-hmm. And it is messy out here in these streets. This story is so messy, man. And there are so many well-worn paths that you start tracking immediately in these lineages. You got something?
No, I was just going to say I find it, and maybe we can tug on this thread another time. I think we will later on kind of flesh it out. But if you notice, all of the women that are listed by name in the lineage of Jesus have a very colorful dynamic to them.
It's interesting.
It's very interesting.
I mean, obviously apart from Mary, but she had the perception of one.
There you go. Like, it's a reoccurring theme that it feels like it's being very much redeemed.
By Mary having to bear that reputation unjustly.
Right.
It's really interesting.
It's almost like all the different facets from the power dynamic to somebody who is like Rahab, who's clearly operating underneath the umbrella or the label and fits that label specifically. And then you have Bathsheba, who is, you know what I'm saying, kind of like cornered into this situation. You got Ruth, as we kind of like alluded to already, who is not even an Israelite.
Right. Right.
It's very, very interesting, like how that's kind of peppered in the lineage specifically.
I mean, very intentionally. Mm-hmm. So in 2 Samuel 12, we find the backstory. So I just want to make sure people are staying with us. We started with David acknowledging the shepherding role of the Lord in setting the right cycles in motion in his life. Then we moved to Solomon being led astray into the wrong cycles by a very specific mechanism, the wives he chose. And then we kind of went, well, how did we get here? And the most obvious clue is Solomon is actually the product of the only truly deplorable marital decision that David ever made.
Yeah.
And to be clear, Bathsheba's the victim. Even if the theory that some people hold that she knew what she was doing when she was bathing on the rooftop, I don't know. I don't know. But even if that's true, she's still the victim because the power differential is so far off the charts that
So far.
it's just.
It's very clear.
I'm just gonna say as a pastor, I've had women throw themselves at me. I'm sure you've experienced that. There's something weird about like some people have a wound that is drawn.
It's charisma.
To perceived power and charisma.
Yeah.
So I've had women throw themselves at me. I'm not saying I'm that guy. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm just saying their wound has drawn that out of them. You have to recognize that if you screw that up, that is a you thing.
That's a very much
That
a
is
you thing.
not a them thing.
There you go.
It's no different than if a minor threw themselves at you.
Come on.
It is
Come on.
exactly the same
Yes.
power dynamic.
Yes.
So, I don't know why we keep coming back to that, but if there happens to be a person of the cloth that's in trouble, you need to run for help and recognize that your soul and the safety of your flock is the only thing that matters now. Not nobody's reputation.
Very much so.
Don't try to fix anything. Just run to Jesus, run to accountability, go to the law if you need to, whatever. I don't know, because we keep coming back to that. So part of me is like, and if you need help having the boldness to do it, holler at us.
Yeah, reach out.
We'll walk with you.
Yes, sir.
As long as you're going where you need to go right away. But we'll walk with you. You don't have to do it alone. Scary thing to do. Then that will determine whether you are a shepherd that fell and can be redeemed and used in other ways by the grace of God, or whether you are a wolf. That's where that gets. You have to decide if you're a predator or a priest that fell.
Yeah.
So, this story that brought this trauma loop in plays out in 2 Samuel. And in chapter 12, we've already heard the story. So the story that most people listening to this podcast probably know. But just in case, the Bible tells us that in the springtime when kings go to war, David stayed home in Jerusalem. And that seems like it's kind of put there to let us know. It's kind of like the old idle minds or the devil's workshop thing. David just should have been busy and he wasn't, right? He's walking on the parapet of his palace, surveying his royal city, and looks across the way and sees a beautiful woman named Bathsheba bathing on top of her house, which was a reasonably common practice.
Right.
The way they would do it was typically out of street view and all of that. The palace happened to be in a position of prominence. But the thing is, David knows that that's his friend's wife. Like,
That's the homie.
Literally one of his best homies. They have been in literal trenches together.
Literal. And the fact that the house was that close shows the proximity of the relationship
That's
to
a
the
crucial
palace.
detail.
Like the fact that it was within eyesight
Yes.
for David to see his homie's wife not acting out of the ordinary. That hasn't more than likely been the first time she's been up there bathing in the evening time.
That's right.
It's just, that's her cycle
I mean,
that she's doing.
this is a good example of if she was, and I'm not comfortable with accusing her of it, but if Bathsheba was throwing herself at David, the only appropriate response to that would have been to rush inside and say, somebody go get her. Help her back into the house. My friend's wife, girl, you drunk, go home.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
That's the only response. Help this young lady get to her bed.
Yeah.
She does not need to be out here. But he didn't have that response. And he wanted her, and he took her, and then he tried to cover his tracks by bringing her husband Uriah home to sleep with her. And Uriah wouldn't sleep with her because he was a man of integrity, and he would not sleep with her while his buddies were back at the battlefront. And he was not going to celebrate until everybody could celebrate.
Yeah.
And so he's ultimately David even tried to get him drunk, which is just horrible. Like, that's two battle buddies sitting together, you know, they were swapping the old stories and everything they had done together.
Yeah.
It gets really gross really fast. Bishop Phillips used to say, I get so enraged at David when I read this story. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's like, when you decide that you are going to split the tree line, split the pole, your decision becomes someone else's demise.
Yeah.
Because everybody in this story, they did not do anything out of the ordinary.
Right.
They were doing the same exact repetition in the cycles that they were on. The Bible says in 2 Samuel chapter 11, then it happened in the spring at the time when kings go out to battle. That tells you the cycle.
David's the one that broke the pattern.
There we go.
And this was a good cycle, not a bad cycle.
Correct.
This was healthy.
It was the cycle that had been established. And when he was in that cycle, things went along the way that they were supposed to go.
He was God's man and the greatest king of Israel.
So Uriah was inside his cycle.
Yeah.
Bathsheba, she was following the same pattern that she probably did.
Probably every day.
Bathing in the evening time on the rooftop. But when David
all
broke
the men
the
are
pattern,
out of town.
But when David decided to break the pattern, it says he rose up at evening time. He got up from his bed.
Yeah. Yep.
That alone right there.
Yep.
Idleness.
Yep.
And he's probably finding himself not in a place of just stillness, but he's restless. And so in the evening time,
I'm sure he's worried about the battle, got the itch.
He's walking around on the roof of the king's house.
Yeah.
And from the roof, he saw a woman bathing.
Yeah.
So he breaks the pattern.
Yep.
And when he decides to go outside of what was established as authorized, it has terrible consequences.
This is an important thing to realize when we break stride, because a lot of what we're talking about tonight is breaking stride when we're sleepwalking. How can we step out of the sleepwalk cycle, right? Where we're just unconsciously reliving stuff. But this is a little different. We're talking about the flip side of the coin here. When you're walking right, when you're in the right paths, the Lord is shepherding you and you're in the right paths. When you break stride with those cycles, with the patterns in your life that are keeping the train on the tracks, that are keeping everybody safe, one thing that it's important to recognize is that your subconscious doesn't get the memo.
Ooh.
And this is going to show up in a powerful way here. Because David stayed home when the kings went to war, right? But that doesn't mean that, because you could ask the question, he had a lot of other wives. You telling me there wasn't some tail available if he needed it that night?
Nathan went so far as expressing that. We'll get to that.
Because that's where it goes.
Yeah.
But he had options.
He did.
Why were none of those options cutting it? Because David's subconscious, his spirit man, let's put it in biblical terms. Like the Jungian stuff is whatever, it works. But his spirit, David's spirit, his subconscious was in conquest mode. He could have had 1,000 wives and it wouldn't have scratched the itch. He already had them. He was in conquest mode. And man, when you are out of step with your purpose and your subconscious is still driving as though we are on track, what you've got is a runaway train with an engineer that has the pedal to the metal. Because the itch David was scratching that night was not sex, it was conquest.
It was conquest. Yeah.
And that's why so many people got hurt. Right?
Absolutely. I don't know if I get this wrong or not, if I'm conflating the stories or even the chronology of it. Wasn't one of the reasons why he didn't go out to war was because of the near-death experience?
Yeah, wasn't it right after...
the brother of Goliath almost took him out.
Where would that be? What would be a key word to look that up?
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes. I think his men might have even told him
to stay back because he was too valuable. So I'm not sure if that happened after this incident or before, but what I believe it happened before this incident, as far as chronology is concerned.
Okay.
That might have been in Chronicles.
Yes. No, 2 Samuel 21. So what have we been in?
11.
So chronologically, I don't know. I know that it shows up later in the text.
Yeah.
Moreover, the Philistines had yet war again with Israel, and David went down and his servants with him and fought against the Philistines, and David waxed faint. So we would have to, because I know his men did tell him at that point, we can't have the king die out here.
Yeah.
So, and that also happens. Young men are for battle, old men are for, but I think that might be later.
It might be later.
Because David still had it in him this night. You know what I mean? It wasn't that. It wasn't like, hey, this is getting to, like, you're as good once as you ever were, but
I think either way, I mean, whether it happened before or even after, I think what took place in 2 Samuel chapter 11, if it happened afterwards, played a key role, because I can imagine what type of pattern established in your mind of like, maybe I don't need to be out here.
Right.
You know?
Wait a second. Yeah. Okay, I was just making sure. Yeah, I mean, whether it is burnout, which is what you would be talking about, whether it's burnout, whether it's, I don't know, it doesn't tell us why he stayed home, so it could have been burnout, it could have been vanity.
Boredom.
Yeah, you know, it could have been a lot of things, and we do wind up in trouble scenarios for a lot of different reasons. But it's important to recognize what you're saying, what you said a minute ago, that when you break stride, when you split the pole, when you are in the Underground Railroad, when you do that, you're not endangering you, you're endangering the whole party.
Everybody.
So David does this thing, man, and he tries to get Uriah drunk, and Uriah still won't go sleep with his wife. He goes home, sleeps on the door, like the
Door to the palace. Yeah, the steps.
Yeah, he goes down to the door of the palace and sleeps on the doormat. And so David has his death warrant signed, put him in the thickest part of the battle, and seals the envelope, and you don't break the king's seal, no matter how close you are to him, and puts the envelope in his pocket and says, when you get back to the battle, give this to your commander. So sick, man. It really does. They used to sing this song, sin will take you farther than you want to go. Yeah. Sin will cost you far more than you want to pay. Mm-hmm. He just was so deep in it by that point. And it's that old, like, when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. And he just He couldn't. He was fully locked in the cycle by this point. And he just saw it through. And he sent that man back to his death, and he took Bathsheba as his wife, and she had a baby from out of that one night stand. And the baby didn't make it, and God, was merciful in the end, but a heavy price was paid, not to mention by Uriah, and very likely by Bathsheba, because no matter what, like we're saying, no matter what her intentions were, whether they were totally pure or they were off, she still got heavily victimized in the situation, which is kind of the only thing that matters about it, really. So then Nathan the prophet comes to see David in 2 Samuel 12. Mm-hmm. And what does he do? He tells him this story. There were two men in one city, the one rich and the other poor. Yeah. The rich man had a great many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing except one little ewe lamb, which he bought and nourished, and it grew up together with him and his children. I can't remember where this is stated. Somewhere it is stated that David waxed very wealthy through conquest and had many flocks and herdsmen, shepherds and herdsmen, flocks and herds. Just to kind of clarify that imagery, a flock is led by a shepherd. The shepherds are led by herdsmen. Mm-hmm. So herdsmen are like foremen. They oversee vast quantities of livestock and the people taking care of them. So I heard it very powerfully preached years ago at a men's conference. The message was A Man and His Lamb. And he was talking about how the backstory to David getting here was that success had put distance between David and the flock by several layers, where David was in the fields with the sheep when he was called and anointed and sent back to the fields and the sheep until he fought Goliath. By the time he gets to this night, he not only is no longer in the fields with the sheep, he's not even interfacing with the shepherds. He's interfacing with the herdsmen. So he doesn't even talk anymore to the people that are touching the sheep. That's just not what the chain of command is like. So David is very, very far removed, and that is a metaphor for where he is in his empire too. He has lost his granular appreciation for each member of his society. He's thinking in terms of borders and GDP and you know. But the poor man had nothing except one little ewe lamb, which he bought and nourished, and it grew up together with him and his children. It would eat of his bread and drink of his cup and lie in his bosom, and was like a daughter to him. Now a traveler came to the rich man, and he was unwilling to take from his own flock or from his own herd to prepare for the wayfarer who had come to him. A wayfarer is a person who's passing through a place because that's not their home.
Yeah.
Rather, he took the poor man's ewe lamb and prepared it for the man who had come to him. Very interesting imagery there, the man who had come to him. David was embodying an archetype that had nothing to do with who he was. The Bible calls it the man who had come to him. I think that's so deep right there that Nathan is saying a rich man had a traveler come to him, and instead of feeding him from one of his own flock, he fed him the poor man's lamb. It says he prepared it for the man who had come to him. There was a version of David that was just passing through. Man, it gives me goosebumps. It was a traveler, it was a wayfarer. It was just passing through. It was just going back to Jungian language, if you want to. It was the shadow. It was a piece of David's brokenness, a piece of a very deep intergenerational wound that was just passing through that night. David couldn't sleep. Something had him stirred up and troubled.
Yeah.
He didn't prepare the lamb, meaning take the woman, for himself, his true self. He took it for the traveler. He fed the traveler.
That's profound. He must, oh, man.
Come on, man. Work on it.
Man, how often do we, man, that resonates deeply with me.
Yeah, it's killing me, man. I didn't even see it coming.
No, just because of like the thought, the impression, the feeling, the desire, the trigger.
Yeah.
We don't treat it as a traveler passing through. We treat it as the homeowner that's taking up residence. And that tells you who's really in charge.
Yeah.
Like who is truly the master.
Yeah.
In that moment. And if we would really, really start to like intentionally wake up from the dream state, like we've been talking about, and recognize like, hey, this is not real. Like us even using like the metaphor as far as like the dream, it makes me think about Inception. And so it's like they needed in the movie some sort of like token that would allow you to recognize, am I in the dream or is this real life? Some sort of tangible object that's heavy that I can feel. It's sensory, right?
Right.
That's going to be the telltale sign that I am able to trust to know, am I dreaming or am I in the real world or not? And somehow along the way, David kind of lost that token that he could trust. And so, like, I think it's very telling that he gets out of bed. I don't know if he was sleeping or not, but in the evening time, he gets out of bed and he finds himself doing something that is not his pattern.
Yeah.
And now he has found himself feeding the traveler.
Yeah.
My God, how many times have we been guilty of just feeding the traveler that is just passing through and having it take like we're giving the traveler the big piece of chicken.
Come on, man.
That's reserved for the homeowner, you know? And I understand the analogy. All analogies break down in one point because we want to have a level of hospitality, but we also got to recognize and know there is still a boundary that should be taking place.
And if the traveler doesn't have enough value in your world,
come on,
to feed them from your own goods, from your own stock. I know this is dehumanizing language, but the analogy had to be somewhat dehumanizing because the situation was so dehumanizing. Yeah. If the traveler does not have enough value in our life for us to feed the traveler at our own expense, maybe that's not a traveler we're called to entertain.
Yeah.
This is killing me, man. This traveler thing has really got me. I didn't see it coming, but it just, okay. I'm gonna read this again because So the prophet says to David, this man had a traveler come to him, the rich man, and he was unwilling to take from his own flock or his own herd to prepare for the wayfarer who had come to him. Rather, he took the poor man's one ewe lamb and prepared it for the man who had come to him. I believe that if we could understand what we're being taught here, it could go a long way towards setting us free. Here's how it shows up in a lot of people's lives. 70% of men, including Christians, are involved or addicted to porn.
Yeah.
And so, yes, that does mean 7 out of 10 men in your church, 7 out of 10 men in your leadership team.
All of the above. Yes.
We're out here fighting for our lives, right? Mm-hmm. So 7 out of 10 men are struggling profoundly with this impulse, not realizing that when they allow themselves to break stride with the paths of righteousness, with the cycles God is instilling in their life for their good, that they can wind up just in the perfect toxic brew. A moment can come together so perfectly designed where there's lack of accountability, there's boredom, there's potentially some kind of psychological struggle. David is lying in bed and gets up and goes outside. No doubt he's had a few. That's just common sense. Yeah. He already ate dinner. Kings drink wine with dinner.
Yeah.
So David has, his inhibitions are just lowered enough. Accountability is not present. The other men are out of town. And he just finds himself in this moment, and the traveler comes to him. And he doesn't recognize the traveler. That's what's giving me chills. The traveler is a fragmented piece of his own soul.
Yeah. That I'm sure have visited him in the past, but you are much more adept to dealing with that when you are in purpose, when your hands are full of doing what God has called you to do.
Yes.
You know?
A lot of people, men especially probably, but just I think women do this too, work out a lot of their trauma in the gym, right? They may not realize that that's what they're doing, but they're doing that.
Yeah.
They're working through trauma in a reasonably healthy way, as long as it doesn't like take over their life or cause them to use drugs they shouldn't use or whatever, right? But at the same time, David is a warrior king. There's every chance that the same demons could have come out of his closet if he had been at the battlefront and caused him to struggle to fall asleep that night. It could have happened out on the battlefront as easily as it did. But the mix of circumstances would have been so different because he would have still been in the right cycle.
Yep.
So he would have had the right people around him, the right accountability present, no access. There would have been a lack of access to the wrong supply. There would have been so many other factors working in his favor that almost certainly what the warrior would have done is realize that fragment of him was a piece that could come in handy on the battlefield. David was in conquest mode. Yes. So that could have fueled his fight, and he could have worked that out in the battle.
Yes.
And been fine. But because he had broken stride, so the traveler comes, and David, not wanting to pay the price of admission to entertain the traveler, reaches into someone else's supply, takes what's not his, and gives it to the man who came to him. It says the man who came to him. I believe so many people could be set free if they would realize that impulses are exactly that. Impulses are wayfarers. Impulses are travelers. They don't live here. They're passing through.
They're passing through.
They are very likely shadows of your broken self, your broken family, whatever. But they are passing through. Impulses are travelers until you make them at home, until you and to spill the most sacred, energetic substance that God has entrusted to the care of the human creature through a mechanism like porn. And this is not, we're not talking here about, this is not legalism. We're talking about where freedom can live.
Yes.
If we really name a thing what it is. Spilling the most sacred, energetically infused substance that God has entrusted to our care within these bodies on someone else's ewe-lamb, to take what belongs to us, first of all, well, to God, first of all, to us, second of all, very close second, and to our partner or partner to be, our spouse, whatever, to take that and expend it in service of an impulse.
Come on.
Is feeding the man that comes to you, and the one that pays the price for that is someone down the line or around you. Because one thing people don't realize is there is an energetic price to be paid for the spilling of that energy, that seed. So you are not able for a little while to show up as the full you after that for the ones you're supposed to. So right away there is a cost.
There is, whether you like it or not.
And this is why Martin Luther famously said, I think it was Martin Luther, that no one is responsible to keep the birds from flying through the belfry of the cathedral. They're going to do that.
Yeah.
But it is the responsibility of the caretaker to make sure they don't build a nest there.
Yep.
That's it right there. Understanding the boundary with the traveler will save you. But David set something, an object in motion tends to stay in motion. David set a really heavy freight train of events in motion several steps back from here. And we all know by the time the traveler knocks on our door, it's really going to matter what our momentum is.
Come on.
So we want to go several steps back from the point where we're having to make the decision about who's going to pay the price to feed the traveler. We want to go several steps back in the process and try to insert the different decision, change the variable.
Yeah.
Several steps back so that we don't have to confront the traveler under the wrong set of circumstances. Because the traveler's coming. The man will come to you.
That's so good. Man.
So David got pissed.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that funny? Because we do be out here hating what this is Romans 7. The things I hate, I do. The things I do, I hate.
I mean, let's keep it all the way a buck. The same people that would rave and rant about the exploitation of the young ladies on the Epstein's list don't see the same exact degradation of women from their search history.
Right.
They have a level of separation in their mind, like, well, my God, I would never go to the island and I would never take advantage of these poor, innocent young victims, right?
Right.
But don't see the irony of their search history.
Yes.
And how degrading it has progressively become.
Right.
Where the Victoria's swimsuit model issue was enough at one point, but that's no longer going to feed the traveler.
Right.
That's just the appetizer. We need something that is so much more. They don't see the difference. They don't see how that is really the same thing in the eyes of a mighty God who is holy. But they find themselves sitting inside the seat of judgment saying, my God, who would do such an awful thing? That man deserves to die.
Right.
And feel no connection at all to the level of sin that their soul has been anchored to.
Yeah. And when you study, like, just continuing this analogy, when you study the industry behind the content that comes to people's devices and becomes the food for the traveler, it's pretty almost immediately apparent that you actually can't verify. First of all, often who's actually of age and who's not.
You can't. You can't.
But you also can't verify who is actually under their own free will and who's not. It's almost impossible because there are so many factors that come into play as to whether someone is being trafficked to any degree or leveraged.
I mean, if we want to, let's just, again, apples to apples.
Yeah.
If we want to say that there was a significant power dynamic between David and Bathsheba, does that disappear when you have somebody who is indigent or somebody who is completely
struggling through college and
being taken advantage of? And you hear their testimonials of people who have, experienced that industry and they've escaped it. They've often said it wasn't at all what was presented or promised. And by the time they're too far into it, all of the drugs and alcohol and everything that's pumped in their system in order for them to be able to disassociate with what's actually taking place. It's no different.
Why would it be? Why would it be as promised when the United States military is never as promised? Used cars are almost never as promised. And we know for a fact that the people working in the traditional film industry are very often being manipulated and coerced in ways that are just horrifying when you find out about them. So why, how could these people possibly be, how could most of them, how could a majority of them truly be in a position to not violate their own boundaries, you know what I mean?
Of course.
Like how? And so all of these things come together, but it's very much like, a lot more people would probably be vegetarians if they had to butcher their own meat. Something about the packaging just cleans it, sanitizes it enough that I don't have to feel like the predator that I actually am in the food chain. It's really very similar. And I think that whatever the set of circumstances around it, something about the distance David had created unintentionally between himself and the people, between the palace and the kingdom, between the flock and himself, had sanitized it enough that he didn't have to confront it until he heard it in language that spoke to the heart of the young boy with the harp. And when Nathan told it in terms that talked to that, he couldn't handle it.
Because the protector in him stood up.
Right.
That wasn't dormant.
No.
It just was completely hidden behind his own hubris.
You know what? When you said that wasn't dormant, you know what came to me immediately?
What?
That part of him wasn't dormant. It was caught off guard. This trouble didn't roar like a bear. This trouble didn't growl like a lion. You know what I mean?
Oh, my God. It was so cloaked and camouflaged.
The little shepherd boy didn't see it coming.
No.
That's deep, man.
That is. Oh, my God. And again, that goes to the generational pattern. Because if we look at what tradition says, his daddy may have had a problem too.
A similar error in judgment at some point. That was a little less costly because he wasn't in the same position.
Right. It's not an accident, more than likely, that his interaction with David's mom may have been less than ideal or authorized.
Right. And
hidden.
Right.
And tucked away and not really quite dealt with, hence him being inside the fields, taking care of ironically, the flocks and herds.
And David's mom very possibly may not have been in the best position.
There you go.
In the first place.
There you go.
The power differential may not have been everything it should have been there. Because it probably wasn't if it was something like.
And so you see it go down the line.
Yeah.
You see it potentially with David, with Jesse, or Jesse with David's mom, David with Bathsheba, but then you see it with his son, Amnon and his sister.
Right.
Same thing. Power differential, and in his situation, he is absolutely taking advantage of his sister.
And every time the cycle shows up, it's uglier because the rut gets deeper every time we go around it.
That's right.
Then David's anger burned greatly against the man, and the rich man in the story. And he said to Nathan, the prophet, "As the Lord lives, surely the man who has done this deserves to die."
Mm-hmm. He does.
He must make restitution for the lamb fourfold, which he's just quoting the law there.
Yeah.
Because he did this thing and had no compassion.
Hold up. You said something that's really key to me. David is just quoting the law.
Yeah.
So the protector in him comes alive.
Right.
And his default settings of what thy word have I hid in my heart that I might not sin against thee. Right?
Yes.
Right. So the law readily is regurgitated.
Yes.
In the presence of obvious injustice.
Right.
But that just goes to show just how easy we can deceive ourselves.
Yes.
That we can completely fool ourselves in feeling like this traveler that is visiting needs to be fed, and we justify it.
I mean, this story is the definition of people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones.
Yes,
David literally threw a rock at the mirror.
Yeah, right. Full force. And then get mad at, hey, who shattered this mirror?
Right.
Y'all need to come clean it up.
Can't even see the criminal anymore.
Right.
Nathan then said to David, and this always gives me chills, you are the man.
You are the man.
Thus says Yehovah, God of Israel. It is. Now here's where ears should perk up, because Nathan is going to make it all about, well, God through Nathan is going to make it all about what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
Thus says Yehovah, God of Israel, it is I who anointed you king over Israel, and it is I who delivered you from the hand of Saul. I also gave you your master's house and your master's wives into your care. Isn't that interesting? I also gave you your master's wives into your care. He's like, I'm sorry, did I not hook you up?
Yeah. You had everything.
Bruh, you had yours and his. And I gave you the house of Israel and Judah. And if that had been too little, I would have added to you many more things like these.
Nathan was cooking at that point.
My God, man. Brutal. Why have you despised the word of Yehovah by doing evil in his sight? And given the context of what you just said about David, thy word I have hidden in my heart that I might not sin against you, that must have cut so deep. Why have you despised the word of Yehovah by doing evil in his sight? You have struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword, have taken his wife. God, by the way, God is brutally and relentlessly removing all the degrees of separation. You have murdered Uriah the Hittite by the sword. Not you sent him to go get killed by a Philistine sword. You killed Uriah.
Because the pen is mightier
sword.
than the sword.
Right.
That letter, boy.
It's the cabal. That's how the cabal starts.
The letter of the law.
Just like that.
Mm-hmm.
Have taken his wife to be your wife, and have killed him with the sword of the sons of Ammon. Now, therefore, the sword shall never depart from your house, because you have despised me and have taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your wife. Bottom line, David's response down in verse 13. Then David said to Nathan, I have sinned against Yehovah. And it turns so fast you get whiplash. Because it got worse. Are you reading where it got worse before I
yeah, verse 11 is crazy.
Verse 11 is just brutal. God basically said, you did all this behind closed doors. I'm going to kick your tail from Dan to Beersheba in front of God and everybody. Like,
When you have the Most High God says, I'm going to raise up evil against you from your own household?
Right.
That's heavy.
But David's response proves that he's no longer entertaining the man who came to him.
Yo, I don't know why I never read this before. This prophecy was super specific. Not only is evil being raised up, he says, I will take your wives before your eyes and give them to your companion.
Yeah.
And he will sleep with your wives in broad daylight.
And
so
you know
what
who
Absalom,
his companion was? His son.
What Absalom did exactly this.
Yes.
As an act
on the rooftop.
On the roof, in front of, and that was in front of everybody.
Yep.
In front of Israel.
It started a revolution.
Which is low key kind of echoing what got Reuben in trouble.
Right.
You're usurping authority.
And Ham.
Yeah. Yep.
But it cuts deep because God doesn't call him his son. He doesn't say, I'm going to give these to your son, your wives to your son. He says, I'm going to give them to your friend, to your companion. Because, of course, he did this to his friend. But that means Absalom was David's buddy. That just to me, that makes it like Brendan.
Oh, he loved him. I mean, his son is legit starting civil war and trying to kill you.
And David's like, is Absalom okay? Is Absalom okay?
That's the only thing he cared about.
Absalom's okay. Which I can feel that. Like, that is a father's heart. Because you don't see the
Betrayal.
You don't see the beast you created. You see the little boy that you held. The little guy that went with you to the corner store. That's who you see. So, I mean,
My God.
this is why I say, like, that's all where we are. And then David's response is, I've sinned against Yehovah. Like, that's all he says. And it turns on a dime so fast. This shows so much about the heart and the character of God. And Nathan said to David, Yehovah has taken away your sin.
You shall not die.
However, because by this deed you have given occasion to the enemies of Yehovah to blaspheme, the child also that is born to you shall surely die. So Nathan went to his house. Because that little boy died is the reason that Solomon became king. Because then later along comes Solomon through that same marriage. And all the grace is there. All of the mercy of God is there. The redemption is there. And yet the cycle is unaddressed. I told a young man that came to me for counsel a couple of weeks ago. I was urging him to go get professional help dealing with childhood trauma. And takes one to know one. And I said to him, the Holy Spirit will work on you, in you, and through you, but he will not work for you. You're going to have to become actively engaged. Engaged in your healing. So the grace of God was all through this situation, but the cycle went unrecognized, largely unrecognized, and almost completely unaddressed.
Yeah.
And so Solomon, all Solomon does is ritualize the cycle. Well, that's really interesting. That by the time the cycle has passed through, so track it. The cycle potentially enters the family through trauma and desperation with Ruth. And then potentially deepens through Jesse. Maybe that might have been less about desperation. Don't have much reason to believe there was any desperation involved in that other than physicality.
Right.
It is institutionalized by David. We're talking about how the rut gets deeper and deeper. David institutionalizes it by bringing power and governmental influence into play. Solomon ritualizes it. Now it is not a fly in the ointment anymore. It is no longer a bug in the system. It is the code. Solomon ritualizes it by marrying these women and building temples for their gods. And then it catches up with Solomon at a systemic level that impacts everything. And we're told that he is led astray by his many wives, not to entirely abandon the God of his father, just to be less completely devoted. He's giving away pieces to other influences. So it's interesting to me that the cycle that started with trauma and maybe deepened by somebody just rehashing that trauma with access to resources in Jesse, then was institutionalized by David, and by the time it got to Solomon to be ritualized, was probably almost entirely unconscious. So, are we good?
Yeah.
Can we do a little turn?
Let's do it.
I mean, it's with purpose, but
Absolutely.
There's a spoken word that comes up on my feed every so often that I find really profound. I'm just going to say the creator is unique. I have no idea what her I don't know what she's about. I don't know what she's into.
Yeah.
You know.
Uh-huh.
I don't know where she's speaking from, but I know she said something.
Come on now.
And her name leads me to believe that she could potentially probably be on the new age side of things minimally. She goes by Anu Marie Ra.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
You probably know the spoken word that I'm referencing. It's about the dark side of smart devices in our homes and everywhere that we go, and basically the first half of that spoken word. Do you know anything about that creator?
I do. I've seen a couple of her videos.
So am I about to quote like a open practitioner of something, or?
I mean, I haven't gone down.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
Yeah.
I just know she was spitting. Anyway, she's talking about this ubiquity. It's very much like Orwellian. It's like 1984. She's talking about the ubiquity of the digital eye.
Yeah.
And how, you know, we scan it to open our phones, and it takes pictures of us on our doorbell, and we check it to watch our kids, and we're on one version of it being entertained and the other version of it being watched, and, you know, all the layers we drive, and it's on the traffic, the intersections, and she's just laying that whole thing out. She's saying, isn't that interesting that our world has produced this approximation of an omniscient, omnipresent, you know, all-knowing, all-seeing, never sleeping, incapable of forgetting presence that is not the source from which we spring. And so that's what the whole meditation is about. So the whole first part of it is basically, hey guys, isn't this creepy? You know what I mean? Like the typical conversation, right?
Right.
But I wrote down, I literally paused it every 10 seconds and wrote down the second half of it, because the second half of it is just wild. And this is where it turns. It says, here's the deeper layer most don't catch. And I'm not going to, her cadence is crazy, but it's so good. But here's the deeper layer most don't catch. It's not just about surveillance. It's about replacement. Instead of turning inward, people now look outward. Instead of inner knowing, they wait for notifications.
Yeah.
Instead of presence, they exist through projection. scrolling, refreshing, checking, repeating. A digital all-seeing eye being normalized while the real one within you is ignored. And slowly, subtly, attention shifts, focus moves, power transfers. Mm-hmm. Because the more attention you give it, the more power it gains. Because attention is currency. Awareness is creation. Where your awareness goes, your reality follows. So the question isn't, why is it everywhere? The real question is, what happens when something artificial becomes more present in your life than your own source? Because whatever you give omnipresence to, which, bro, come on, man. That's so Brewster, I can't believe you didn't make that line. Omnipresence with a TS. Yeah. Because whatever you give omnipresence to, whatever you constantly return to, whatever you check, trust, and rely on, that becomes your center. That becomes your authority. That becomes your guide. And eventually, that becomes your God.
Mic drop.
Oh, my Lord. And that last line, that becomes your guide. Whatever you constantly return to, whatever you check, trust, and rely on, that becomes your center. That becomes your authority. That becomes your guide. And eventually, that becomes your God. You know what's a little wild about this? I hadn't seen this in probably, months. And I didn't remember anything about it other than that she spat. This popped up on my feed 5 minutes after I noted down on my iPhone, God's guides.
Oh, wow.
What am I calling this? God's guides, habits, and handlers. I wrote that down. Wasn't looking for anything.
The algorithm just served it up.
Bro. On a different app. So I made this note. Gods arise out of fetishized familiarity. So, let me.
Gods arise out of fetishized familiarity.
Fetish is, the etymology is a material object regarded with awe as having mysterious powers or being the representative of a deity that may also be worshipped through it. So it's another word for idol. It comes from a Portuguese word for charm, sorcery, allurement, made by art, artificial, to make, do, produce. But in Middle English, it means cleverly made, neat, elegant of things, or handsome, pretty, or neat of persons. But in the Middle Ages, the Roman derivatives of the word took on magical senses: sorcery, witchcraft, sorcerer, wizard. So if you look up in the modern dictionary, define fetish, obviously there's like a sexual connotation to that word, but the second, so that's the first form, because that's how it shows up in our language a lot, which is connected to this. But the second definition is an inanimate object worshipped for its supposed magical powers or because it is considered to be inhabited by a spirit. But I'm using it somewhat loosely because I think that we understand worship in such an ecclesiastical context. Yep. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To offer your energy, your attention, your
it's whatever you assign worth to.
Right. That is worship.
It's worship.
Worship.
Yes.
So to me, little g gods that she's talking about, those are what show up out of fetishized familiarity. And I wrote in parentheses, gods disguised as guides, because I think that's where the fetishization comes in. We begin to assign value and worth to components of our lived experience or our ancestral memory, because that's a big piece of this. Is you're carrying the memory of things that didn't happen within this lifetime, that happened to the people that you came to this earth through.
Yeah.
And so you assign worth and value to these things because they are the things that have been most familiar to you, which to the ego equates familiarity equals safety. What the subconscious mind does not want to hear is an alarm bell. The number one thing that your subconscious does not care for is surprise, unfamiliarity. If we don't, you know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
So when the conscious mind raises an alarm, don't know what this is, the subconscious immediately goes, oh, crap, it's probably going to eat us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And so then the subconscious immediately begins cycling through looking for reference. What could this be like? So all of that is to say, there's a reason nobody has to tell you to run when a rattlesnake rattles. Something very primal comes up in you. You're literally, the hair follicles on your neck stand up, and your whole body goes into this mode. Your conscious mind switches off, and you're halfway down the street before you know what it was.
Yeah.
You react so much quicker than the speed of cognitive thought. That's ancestral memory. You've never heard that before. But as soon as the conscious mind went, I don't know what that is, the subconscious went, oh, run. That's ancestral memory. We all have it. And it feels like it keeps us safe, because sometimes it does. But not all of it. Sometimes it just keeps us confined. Sometimes it's just determining outcomes. It's not protecting outcomes. It's determining outcomes. But we tend to fetishize it. We tend to ascribe worth to it because it feels familiar. It feels safe.
I wonder, since we've been talking about David, if a pattern had been set in his life where the traveler shows up, but this time the traveler was violence. Remember him and Abigail and Nabal?
Mm-hmm.
And so David shows up and he is needing supplies, and he is ignored and ridiculed and rebuked even by this man named Nabal. And David's first reaction is, okay, bet.
Yeah.
You and everybody that's with you is about to die. Because I know that we have treated you well. We've protected your property out on the roads. Our men didn't do anything. And this is how you repay me?
Right.
Death is going to come.
Bet. Yeah.
His wife, Abigail, meets him on the road with supplies.
Yeah.
And satiates
Yeah.
the traveler.
Yep.
And you notice the pattern that happens. The Lord ended up killing Nabal.
Because he was an idiot.
Absolutely. And she even identifies like, my husband is, yeah, I'm sorry.
She said, you're not going to ruin your whole reputation over a moron, are you?
Right.
Yeah.
Basically. And he dies. And what does David do? Takes her as his wife.
Yep. Which, to be clear, was the right thing to do. He needed to care for her. Her husband got killed. Yeah.
But that was something that was authorized.
Yep.
Notice who did the killing in that situation.
Yeah.
But now, fast forward to him and Uriah.
Yeah.
He's like, travelers arrive, whether I recognize it or not. Something has to be satiated.
Yeah.
Oh, well. I wonder if something in his subconscious is like making some type of neural connections of like, well, last time that you needed to satiate the traveler that's arriving,
Yep.
you took a wife and it was good.
Bro, that is such a believable scenario.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
That's just really interesting to me. Yeah, well, go ahead.
When we remember that everything that pertains to darkness is just inversion and it's just distortion.
Yeah.
So the good, that is the thing about reliving. That is the thing about being locked in a different moment. Mm-hmm. It's so dangerous because Ecclesiastes 3 says that the Creator has made all things beautiful in their time. And the good that God did in the past is no longer where God is. So if you go to that place, God is not there.
Come on.
Because it's not even a real place. God is everywhere real. But that moment in time does not exist. It does in an eternal sense. But if you go there in time, God is not there anymore. So who's there? And who's guarding? So even the good that God has done in a different moment can become distortion in this moment if we are living this moment through the lens of that one.
Yes.
This is why I'm saying that I think most people, most of the time, are sleepwalking through life and don't understand that the reason that nothing fundamental ever changes is because you can't change the key variables inside of the dream. They're all just going to be different versions of the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so we reach a little further back in Genesis 31 where this concept of household gods, which we're saying is also something we call intergenerational trauma cycles, that kind of thing. Fetishized components of your family experience, of familiar experience that feel like they keep you safe.
Yeah.
And this is when Jacob realizes that the jig is up at Laban's house, and like the brothers are starting to realize that he has cleaned out their inheritance through no fault of his own, because Laban repeatedly tried to scam Jacob, and God had Jacob's back, and Jacob scammed the scammer, and all of that stuff, right? So Jacob gets up middle of the night, grabs everyone and everything, and sneaks out of Dodge. He did not leave through the front door. And so this comment is made in Genesis 31:19 while this is taking place, while Jacob is quick getting everybody together to run. It says, while Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and so Laban's the father-in-law, Rachel is wife number one, kind of. Number one in status, number two in, what do you call it, chronology. Rachel stole the household idols that belonged to her father. She knows they're leaving, and what does she do? She steals the household gods, right? Now, this is something that gets lost in the English. This is, again, where the Net Bible came in handy. Jacob also deceived Laban, the Aramean, by not telling him that he was leaving. Now, we've all read that, right?
Yeah.
But what is not obvious in English is why those two observations are made back to back. Leah stole the household gods. Laban deceived her dad. It's not obvious why they're back to back in English, but it is in Hebrew, because the Hebrew idiom that is used, that is rendered in English, deceived, Jacob deceived Laban. The Hebrew idiom is stole his heart. So that's just an expression that meant deceived, stole his heart. It's no different than saying, what do we say? To say something that we, we might say the frog in the pot, and we're obviously not talking about a frog in the pot.
Busted his chops.
Yeah. Busted his chops. So Jacob stole Laban's heart. So in the Hebrew, you read, Rachel stole the household idols that belonged to her father. Jacob also stole the heart of Laban, the Aramean, by not telling him that he was leaving. What you're being shown here is that Jacob and Rachel really are twin flames. They really are two of a kind.
Yeah.
And so that's what you're supposed to notice here is Jacob and Rachel, they vibe. They're rolling together the same way through this situation. When Laban catches up with him the next day and confronts him, and Jacob's like, well, first of all, I know you're mad that I snuck out, but I snuck out because you're not safe, and we're not safe with you, and so that's why I left. But then he's like, this thing about you're mad about your household gods being stolen, I'm so confident that nobody stole your household gods. Whoever has them, let them be put to death, right?
Right.
That's verse 32. Verse 32, where Jacob makes that rash pronunciation, ends with this statement in parentheses. Now, Jacob did not know that Rachel, his favorite, had stolen them. Verse 33 says, Laban goes into Jacob's tent, Leah's tent, the tent of the two female servants, doesn't find the household gods anywhere. Then he leaves Leah's tent, enters Rachel's. Verse 34 opens with a parenthetical remark. Now Rachel had taken the idols and put them inside her camel's saddle and sat on them.
Yeah.
Laban searched the whole tent but did not find them. Rachel said to her father, don't be angry, my lord. I cannot stand up in your presence because I am having my period. So he searched thoroughly but did not find the idols. So we have this thing. Twin flames, both stealing, don't know what each other are stealing, but they're both pulling a scam. Then this thing where Rachel scams Laban again. Jacob apparently still doesn't know, right? Immediately, Jacob is now going to be confronted with Esau wrestling with the angel, having his identity changed, all of that stuff, right? And God's going to wind up telling Jacob, go back and live in Bethel where I met with you the first time.
Right.
So when God tells Jacob in a dream to do that, Jacob gets up in Genesis 35. So we're just 4 chapters later. Jacob told his household, verse 2 of Genesis 35, and all who were with him, get rid of the foreign gods you have among you. Nothing more has been said. Jacob has built whole altars, homesteads, consecrated stuff, wrestled with the angel, had his identity changed, made peace with Esau. Not a single solitary word has been said about these household gods Jacob apparently doesn't know about. Then God tells him, hey, you're going to come live in my house, Bethel, and, bring your family over there. Well, as soon as Jacob hears that he's going to live in God's house, he gets up, verse 2, get rid of the foreign gods you have among you. Purify yourselves and change your clothes. Let us go up at once to Bethel. Then I will make an altar there to God who responded to me in my time of distress and has been with me wherever I went. The Lord is shepherding me. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He restores my soul. So they gave Jacob all the foreign gods that were in their possession and the rings that were in their ears. So it's typically been thought that we're being told that they somehow, when Jacob told them to give them the household gods, that he somehow magically now knows they have. Right. That when he told them to give them up, that they knew instinctively to also take their earrings out and give them to Jacob, which could make sense because the idea would be that sometimes earrings could be used to signify a covenant connection to an idol, where you could be saying, I'm going to listen to, which in Hebrew is synonymous with obey, and in the Canaanite languages would have been.
Yes.
So there could have been a covenant connection there where they're saying, we're going to get rid of the object and our agreement to obey, right? Mm-hmm. To be guided by this entity. But there's another view that these might well have been earrings in the ears of the idols, which would have signified, if they put earrings in the ears of an idol, it was signifying their belief that the ear of the idol had been open to hear their prayer.
Wow.
So whatever it is, when Jacob said, give up your household gods, they instinctively knew what we're getting rid of here is the whole agreement. However that agreement was structured, what they got rid of was the whole agreement that went with it. It's interesting to me that Jacob, in his deceiver identity, apparently did not recognize when Rachel was scamming to keep those connections to those guides. That's no different. The household god is no different from saying the ancestors or from saying my guides are telling me or whatever.
All of that, yeah.
So it's interesting that Jacob didn't seem to know that she was doing that in his Jacob identity and his deceiver identity. But once he had wrestled with the angel and integrated all of that conflicted nature into one warrior who has prevailed over, interestingly here, God and man, as in the man that comes to you. Once Jacob has overcome that, he doesn't ask if there are household gods. What I wanted to point out is he sees the cycles. He knows there are household gods. He doesn't have to ask about it. And that's one of the cool things when we're wanting to break out of these agreements that have tormented our families unaware for generations, is recognizing that you don't have to lay eyes on the issue itself to see its footprints, to see.
Come on.
You can look at the rut you're in and know whether the good shepherd brought you there or a different kind of guide brought you there. You can know the nature of the shepherd that is setting your course by observing the rut that you're moving through the pasture in.
How do you find yourself truly stepping outside to see that, to observe it?
Well, Jacob had to wrestle all night with God.
There we go.
I think that's the deal. There's no shortcut. You have to do the work. But what you're fighting for is surrender. That's the thing. It's not complicated. It is hard. It's not easy. But it's not complicated. You need to grab a coffee?
No, my mind's just going so many different places, even with this text, with the consequences. But that's a different rabbit hole.
There are so many good ones.
Yeah, you intentionally holding on to something that is stronger than you, but is going to break you down and literally change the way that you walk.
Yeah.
That's going to be the key for you being able to break that cycle that you have found yourself in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that household God, like, tie-in makes a lot of sense. I thought maybe you were going to Micah.
Yeah.
At first.
That's much darker.
Yeah. It is. No, but yeah, that's good.
Look, man. This is not, I know we're reaching into a lot of different stories, but we're just pointing at
Themes,
the same concept.
Yeah.
These household gods, these pieces of the way that we process the world, they may enter in a totally legitimate way. Most things that became an idol started as, right?
That's my point, yeah.
Just treasure, or
Yeah.
you earned it fair and square, or you won a battle, or right?
Yeah.
So but when you recognize something as an emblem of today's win, and tomorrow you look back to it for tomorrow's win, for the safety it represents in your mind, you're taking the first step toward fetishizing the familiarity of a thing and looking to it to be a guiding light in your life. You hear so many people say, I've always this or that. And implicit in them saying that is, that's why I'm going to do it right now.
Yeah.
Whereas a really healthy thing would be to stop, because everyone will quote at you that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different
result.
But I always wonder the irony of that. When people quote that, I always wonder, how many times have you quoted that and it hasn't changed your life? Because the ultimate irony would be if you go around quoting that, expecting it to work, and it doesn't work. You have to actually change something. So these household gods form when we fetishize familiarity, but they come in disguised. First of all, they often come in as blessing. Then they disguise themselves as our guides. It's experience. It's tradition. It's culture. We have so many names for it. But if we don't interrogate it to make sure that
it shapes us.
It shapes us. So it feels like a guide, but it very quickly can become a god. A guide I listed as ingrained memory loops, ingrained memory loops, whether that's your memories, your ancestral memories, whatever. If it happened 30 seconds ago, it's already a memory. So be careful about leaning on it for the next 30 seconds. It can be wisdom as long as it's in its proper balance. So I put guides as ingrained memory loops, and I put in parentheses, they become problematic when they are obsolete models that are masquerading as heirlooms. So it feels like it has inestimable value in your life because you inherited it. But if you're still running the same model your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, like not splitting the pole, had a phenomenal use case apparently when it first came in. Mm-hmm. But the question is 3, 4, 5, 6 generations down the road, is it still serving that purpose? And if it's not serving that purpose, why are we still ascribing value to it? And so when an obsolete model is being held as an heirloom treasure, which an heirloom means an inherited tool. That's what it means, a loom, an inherited tool. Now we can begin a guide. What feels like a guide may be misdirection, playing a comforting role. And our continued insistence on ascribing value to it is in danger of idolizing it,
of course,
and ascribing divinity to it.
Yes.
Which makes this really interesting. In Matthew 15, Jesus says to the disciples, in verse 12, the disciples come to him and say, do you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard your statement where he said, bruh, don't bother my disciples about whether they do the ceremonial hand wash before they eat. And they got offended because he said, you know that it's not what you eat that makes
Defiles,
you ritually unclean, right? It's what you poop. Mm-hmm. Like, you know what I mean? He's like, it's what comes out of you. That's what makes you unclean. And they didn't like that. And so the disciples wanted to make sure Jesus knew they didn't like it. And he answered and said, every plant which my heavenly Father did not plant shall be uprooted. Right there, right there, right there. Right there, we're talking about how much value does something have in your life and where does that value come from? Understanding that everything God didn't plant is going to be uprooted is where peace lives when it gets uprooted. And then verse 14, let them alone or turn them loose. They are blind guides of the blind. If there's one thing the Bible is insistent about, idolatry subjects you to looking to guidance to something that can't see, for guidance to something that can't see, looking for wisdom from something that can't hear or speak.
Cannot help you, no.
They are blind guides of the blind. And if a blind man guides a blind man, both will fall into a pit. Mm-hmm. And in Scott McKnight's Matthew 23, which is just a couple of chapters later, Jesus says the same thing about blind guides. But Scott McKnight's translation says, sightless guides, those sifting out the gnat but swallowing the camel. And I found out something that blew me away. Did you know that straining at gnats, because isn't that how we always heard that? Mm-hmm. Who strain at a gnat? Mm-hmm. That's almost certainly a typo. It wasn't supposed to say straining at. It was supposed to say straining out. And like a printing press messed up.
Oh, wow.
And so in English, it's always been straining at, which has made it a little like, what?
Yeah, it's odd.
But he just said, no, you'll filter a gnat out of your wine, your coffee, but you'll swallow a camel. when I looked up the word for strain, or here sifting, same word, it's a filter. So Jesus is questioning their filter.
Yeah.
And he calls them sightless guides, those sifting out the gnat but swallowing the camel. Your metric is wonky. You're using the wrong filter.
Right.
Woe on you, covenant code scholars and observant masked ones. I loved Scott McKnight's way of saying Pharisees because he calls them observant, and that's powerful because he's talking about being blind. And Scott McKnight is saying, you're observant, but you're blind. You're observant of the law, but you're blind to the heart behind it. And then he calls them masked ones. That's how Scott McKnight renders hypocrite. Not you act one way in the street and another way in church. No, you're wearing a mask. Again, we're dealing with filters.
Yeah.
Because you clean the exterior of the cup and the saucer, but inwardly are filled with extortion and the absence of control. Sightless, observant one. Clean first the inside of the cup, so the outside will be clean. Sightless, observant one. So just to kind of wrap up the thought, bro, it's like when we allow the wrong filter to become our source of confidence, what feels like a guide becomes blind to the trouble spots. It'll get the gnat out, but it won't filter out the camel.
Right. Our focus is so skewed.
And when we're still finding comfort in it, it goes from being a guide to being a god. And the more we repeat it, the more that becomes the defining aspect of the space we live in, right? Which is why I chose the word habits. And I don't want to get into it, but if you want to see the mechanics of how that looks when it plays out, watch Groundhog Day. It's such an easy illustration. A man wakes up in the same day every day, and if you watch the arc of the movie carefully, the only way out of that loop for him, he has to change the character he's playing. He has to peel back all of the masks and get more and more real. God. And what's funny is because of the character he's playing, the whole first, whatever, 2/3, 3/4 of the movie, he cannot win the love of Rita because he's not chasing Rita. He's chasing a projection of who he thinks Rita is. He has decided that she's this character in his game, and that's not the way to her heart because that's not who she is. And when he finally gets real with her and tells her what's really going on and shows her the respect of seeing her, not only does he win her, a lot of people think he gets out of the loop because he does good deeds. No, he does good deeds day after day and wakes up in Groundhog Day. That whole journey is him coming back into his purpose and stripping away the filters, the blind guides, and finding himself again. And when he's finally been reduced to the point that he's ready to be real with her, she feels seen and she sees him. Now they find each other and the spell breaks and he wakes up to a new day. It's a beautiful parable of what it's like to step out of this cycle and into a new life, one little incremental move at a time. But what's happening is you're breaking habits because the blind guides that become the household gods entrench themselves in the habits of our lives as we go around and around this circle. And what I wrote down about habits is they look like how you live Habits look like how you live, right? Mm-hmm. But they're really where you live. Habit, it's the same root as habitat. It comes from an old root in Latin that means to have and to hold, to possess and thereby to live in, to dwell in. So a habit is not a quality of yours, it's your property.
That's actually your dwelling place.
Your dwelling place.
Yeah.
It dresses you because it's your address. That's why monks and nuns have a habit. It's a loosely connected word, but it is connected. It's what you live in. So we go from finding guidance and comfort in bygone experience. We fetishize that to the point that it begins to hold the place of divinity in our life. It becomes sacred to us, gets ingrained in the form of habits, but the ugly twist, and I put, this is where the rug pull really is that by the time the household gods, the guides have become gods and habituated themselves into our cycles, they are no longer our habits. They are our handlers.
Yeah.
They are no longer sustaining the life we want to live. They are choosing the life we live. They are no longer serving the outcome we seek. They are choosing the outcome. And we're now being handled by influences that have no interest in us reaching our destiny. And that's what happened to David.
Mm-hmm. Man, that's a lot that you unpacked. But for me, like, the takeaway is wake up to the fact that how you're being handled can be drilled down with you observing what you have allowed to become a habit in your life. You even coming to that conclusion is key. Recognizing, like, do an inventory list of what have you engaged in habitually, what has become a habit for you. And that's going to point to what's really dragging you around, what's handling you.
Yeah.
And then compare and contrast that to what you have allowed to guide you. And have you innocently, probably, but more than likely ignorantly categorize what you have let guide you, not recognize it's really your God.
Yeah.
You've assigned worth to it. You worship it. Your habits are indicated of that.
Yeah.
Your habits are going to really, really tell you what you're worshiping, what you find yourself going back to, the cycles that you continue to repeat.
Yeah.
Man, that's heavy.
I know you're out here fighting for your life in these streets, so I'm just going to give a 90-second personal testimony because I want to be transparent enough that hopefully it will encourage somebody. I heard something that really helped me not very long ago. And so I have been open with you guys that I've been fighting my way off of various forms of medication and pain control for over a decade now, well over a decade. And in the last few years, I've gone by leaps and bounds. I'm no longer on anything prescription related. I'm no longer using even over-the-counter pain medicine for the issues that I was struggling with. but I'm using a little bit of stuff that's more natural that I still don't want to be using for a lifetime. And I was using a lot of it.
Yeah.
And no, it's not cannabis. I had fought to be able to function without that. It's just, there is some pain still left. And so learning how to be able to function well without a little bit of help has been challenging. And I've gotten down to where I'm using so little of anything that it was frustrating when I hit like a month-long pocket of not being able to lower the dose at all.
Yeah.
But it's already like very low.
Yeah.
And I heard someone make this statement, and it helped me profoundly. They said, people so overcomplicate this business about, trying to create a new version of you, manifest a new reality, however you want to say it. This person said, and you told me this is, I haven't read Atomic Habits, but apparently this directly connects from what you told me. But this person said, think of the version of reality that you're working toward, the version of you that you are working to bring forth, and think of one habit in your life that version of you would handle differently, that would be handled differently in that reality. Make sure it's super small and attainable so that once you shift it, you'll never go back.
Yeah.
And so this person just said, think of one habit that would show up differently in the reality that you want to be living in, and make up your mind to shift that habit just a little bit. And what you have to recognize when you do this is you've got the butterfly effect working for you.
Yes, you do.
So you think of it as holding the longest crowbar in the world. Like you can move stuff. This is what Jesus meant about faith the size of a mustard seed. You can say to this mountain, be removed, right? You have leverage like nobody's business. So I thought, well, one thing that I do that the well version of me does not do is I still take my first dose of the little bit that I am using first thing in the morning. As soon as the alarm goes off the first time, I take it, and then I lay there for another little while till a second alarm goes off so that it will have already done its work and be in my bloodstream, and I'll be able to get out of bed, not be stiff and all of that,
function,
right?
Yeah.
And so I just thought, well, the well version of me doesn't do that. So I'm just going to set one alarm. And then at that point, if I feel the need to take a dose, I can take it and get up and move around for a few minutes until it, and I just shifted that.
Wow.
And immediately the momentum, an object at rest tends to stay at rest. An object in motion tends to stay in motion. I was dealing with an object at rest for a month. I could not get it back into motion. And by that one tiny little tweak, the object got in motion again, and I started being able to crank the dosage down again. I don't really know how, because it happened within 24 hours. After the first time that I changed that habit, the momentum started again. That really encouraged me, and I wanted to share it because I think this stuff feels so profoundly overwhelming. Let me use an example. You come home every day exhausted from work and walk into a home with a toxic partner who hates the sight of you. And you have been dealing with this for so long that you're not even sure how much you care about fixing it, but it's miserable living this way. It's a lot to think about what it would take to fix this, but if you can get with the Lord and say, Father, the version of me that is in a healthy marriage with this person, that's in a healthy home dynamic with this person. What's one thing that person does differently than I do every day when I come in right now? Could have to do with the way you interface with them, with the way you greet each other, the responses you give. Maybe there's stuff you used to do instinctively that you don't do to kind of carry your weight anymore because you're just like so sick of the toxicity that you're like hands off, whatever. But the Lord will show you one little tiny tweak that would be the way the healthy, healed version of you would do it, will do it when the work is done. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like little tweaks. I'm just talking about like can you just imagine the tiniest little shift that would show up within the reality you are believing God to live in, and just adopt one little change that exists in that reality and leave the rest to God for now until you have the strength to address the next thing. And you talked about how that relates to something you called habit stacking, and all that sounds amazing. For me, it just was so empowering that one little shift can have this impact you can't fathom.
Yep.
The Lord is shepherding me, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He restores my soul. He leads me in right paths for the sake of his reputation. It's just making sure you leave the blind guides alone. You let the handlers and the habits and all of that stuff, let it drop away just for long enough to say, Lord, what is one piece of this model that came from them and not from you that I can shift tonight? And make sure it's doable enough that like you're not going to have trouble just changing that piece of the model and leaving it changed no matter what happens.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's all.
I love it. Well, we got homework. I think it's something that we can all actively, tangibly find ourselves doing. I know I will. Kind of visualizing, like you're saying, what is the person that you're trying to become? How do they react? How do they respond to X, Y, Z?
Yes.
And once you've made that assessment, then you can really start to understand what's guiding you, what you're worshiping, how your habits are forming you. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, I think we are kicking off the new channel and this next season of what it means to live in Antikemi the best way possible. More coming. Until next time, live Antikemi.
Be Hebrew.
We love you guys.